The thing I was trying to tell you yesterday is that RBI performs a number of functions which are not traditional functions of a central bank. Now, I started with the supervisory functions, some of which may be traditional in the sense other central banks also do, may not do, but there are quite a few which other central banks don't. I started with something called supervisory functions, where I explained that even to form a bank, create a bank, commercial bank or a non-bank also, non-bank too, you need permission or a license to do that. Like in case of founding a company, you have to go to the Securities and Exchange Board of India, etc., etc. There are company laws. You have to file an application. There has to be approved. There are many things, rules and regulations. There has to be registration. All right. They check your paid up capital, all sorts of things. You frowned because, you think creating a company requires something more. You frowned, something more. If you have more points to add, please do that. Raise your hand and add it. Now, in case of a bank, which is quite tricky because bank is going to start getting advertise and ask people to deposit money. So, right away the responsibility increases a lot. You are accepting people's money all the time, and then you start giving out loans from that money. So, licensing is not enough. Like in case of company got a license, opened the stuff, unless there is a major problem. You heard the major problem going on with DLF, for instance, big company. It's partly political, partly true. Now, the problem is, unless it gets to that level where there is a newspaper exposure or something, some investigation, people don't care much about a company. Company can run on its own, produces, doesn't produce, whatever. So, continuous monitoring is not required and cannot be done. There are millions and millions of companies in a country, but there are not millions and millions of banks. A bank may have many branches, together they are millions, but there is one bank and then another bank, then another bank. So, in case of a bank, the regulatory aspect becomes much more important because they are dealing with people's money. And if you say a poor person, for instance, who has one account in his life he could open, I have seen that in State Bank, who cannot even write and they give the thumb impression on checks and often ask me, साहब थोड़ा फिलअप कर दीजिए तो वो जो विड्रॉल स्लिप है उधर में बैंक में ही मिलता है, चेकबुक भी नहीं. तो मैं फिलअप कर दिया. उसके बाद ये काउंटर में गए, आस्किंग देम टू पुट अ फिंगर थंब इम्प्रेशन, ये वाला लो उधर में लगाओ. What I'm trying to say, if a bank fails vis-a-vis a company failing, a small company, there is an enormous difference. So, supervisory functions are very important, monitoring them. So, who does it? In our case, RBI, at least in books, they say that RBI has the responsibility of doing it. Whether a bank is following or maintaining their CRR, whether a bank does business honestly or not the way they should, there can be periodic review, just not financial statements, everything, customer services. If a bank cheats a depositor or somebody else, there are formal complaints that can be lodged with the RBI. And then when it comes to banking detailed activities, like what would be the personnel structure, the manpower structure? A CEO? Okay. And then what? Board of directors? All right. And then a manager of each branch. And then what else in the branch? What else at the head office? The structure, manpower planning. This is often RBI comes, steps in, helps. Training, banking activities. You get a job tomorrow, straight out of IIT Kanpur. How would you know what banks want to do, you to do? You have to be given a training. A good bank itself has a school, a class kind of thing, where they send you off It's a staff training college, they call sometimes. IS officers have. IS officers have very important staff training college. They go for rigorous training for a year or two. In case of banks also, they may send you for 6 months, not 2 years. But it's important. Now, suppose banks don't have people to train. Now, RBI will have to help them. So, the supervisory functions are very important. I will send you my notes. You can read up, and Bole's book is there, and other books are there. Then a bank wants to expand, wants to open more branches. Is it really, financially viable to open a branch? Because open a branch like open a branch of IIT Kanpur means what? Huge amount of fixed costs, overhead costs, buildings, the area has to be bought, the geographical area, or rented from somebody, or leased. Then the buildings will come up, fixed costs, then all that amenities, water supply, electricity, everything. And then the people have to be hired, they will run it. So, financial viability of opening a branch is very important. So, RBI does inspect that also. Now, RBI's headache is enormous, of course, you can say that. My goodness, RBI is the highest monetary authority, RBI is advising the government, helping the government, RBI is setting the monetary policy, prescribing monetary policy. RBI is also supervising the entire banking sector. From 1995, they started supervising the non-banks, bits by bits, not the entire non-banking sector. Non-banking sector is mammoth, huge non-banking sector. I think in money terms, it may not be bigger than the banking sector, but in terms of sheer types and units, and they are just not one type called commercial bank or another type called cooperative banks. There are so many kinds of non-banks, so many types. So, that supervision is also becoming important because their business is expanding and they are also often dealing with public money. All right. So, there are a whole lot of then selection procedure of the bosses of a bank. Who will be the chairman of SBI? It's a very important task because once you select the right person, the entire unit functions properly. If you select the wrong person, the entire unit starts malfunctioning. So, it's very important whom you select. So, RBI always gets involved with that. So, these are the supervisory function details, which I talked about yesterday. Then comes the additional headache that Government of India has given RBI. Even if you call this is okay, these are traditional, they should be with the central bank. Even if you say, maybe some countries don't use this kind of detailed supervisory functions, central banks don't have. There are some other agencies, government agencies may be doing them. But in case of promotional functions, the second set that I talked about is entirely a headache given to the RBI, to our central bank by the Government of India. The entire promotional thing is with a view to development. Now, how many kinds of broadly development issues can be there? Agricultural development, overall rural development, where agriculture and non-agricultural sectors will come. We have a huge problem of traditional industries, handicraft, etc., where lots of skilled people were there. So, when the machine products came after the Industrial Revolution, they got wiped out. Now, it's only the kind of the, what you call that, it's like an artifact or like a luxury item you acquire things, all right. Like people procure paintings. They have lots of, when people have lots of money, they procure a Picasso painting, and boast about it. Paid millions of dollars, just one painting. So, our traditional skill industries, which are not daily use, are not used daily, except a few like jadus and some handmade fans and few traditional items I see at household. All are machine products, company products these days. Okay. Now, what will those people do? So, that's the handicraft industry, old traditional industry is also a huge problem in rural development. And then you of course have infrastructure related issues in rural development. And you come to urban development, again a set of whole range of industries, small scale, medium, large or heavy industries, infrastructure, then you know so many things that are important. Then you go to the export-import sector. What I am trying to tell you is promotional activities in a country which has been poor, has been backward, is enormous. Now, normal profit-making organizations won't go and lend there often, because they don't have any money to make. And they know if they lend them, even if it's a small amount to a farmer, 20,000 rupees, it will not come back probably. The farmer, as soon as he gets a 20,000, eats up probably 5,000 before putting the money in proper use, because घर में खाना ही नहीं है. So the capital is eaten up already by the end of the month. थोड़ा अच्छा खाना मिला, हाट में 3 बार चले गए महीने में, एक बार ही जा नहीं पा रहे थे. And this is the state of affairs in India. And then you have this money to do the agriculture, and then agriculture is always an uncertain business, like investing in a stock market, whether it rained or not. All right? If it does rain, when the rain comes, if it comes too late, useless. Then it rained so heavily as it happened. Some parts of India like Rajasthan and other places, that it washed away everything. In Assam, northeast, it has happened. So it's like investing in a stock market. You don't know whether you would make money. Now, therefore, promotional activities require what we call, I will explain that in the next topic, called social banking. Social banking is not private banking or profit-making banking. Social banking is doing charity work, like NGOs do. Now, therefore, government has to step in, because normally commercial banks would say, my goodness, we are a profit-making organization now, you are asking us to donate so much. We are not interested. Then RBI steps in, gives money, okay, use this money to do that, all right. Then they set also various kinds of credit policies. If you read Bhole and other books and older books, you will see from time to time we had various credit policies. Strict instructions came from RBI to these commercial banks. How much will be your priority lending? Out of priority lending, how much should go to the rural areas? How much will go as priority lending to the urban areas? And then you have the optional lending, which you would like to make, where you think you can make money. Okay. So, promotional activities, and also RBI was given the promotional activities which is called setting up of non-banks, just not commercial banks. It did set up a range of commercial banks called regional rural banks. I am coming to that in the next topic. Entire set of commercial banks were set up by RBI with the help of some big public sector banks like State Bank of India, etc., called regional rural banks. They were created. They didn't exist. They are only 30, 40 years old, regional rural banks. They were not there before independence or even after independence for many years. For 20 years it wasn't there. And then they suddenly came. They were set up. But also RBI has the headache in terms of promotional activities, not only giving money to commercial banks to do priority lending, they also have set up periodically big non-banks, IDBI, Industrial Reconstruction Bank of India, Export-Import Bank, NABARD, you name them, the big guys in non-banking sector. They were all set up. It's a huge task, na? Tomorrow I ask you to set up another IIT. Can you believe how much work it will go into it? Enormous amount of work. IIT was not created in one day, in 1 month, in 1 decade. It takes years to create these IITs. So, when you set up again another, say, an engineering college, it requires an enormous amount, just not money, expertise, planning, all sorts of things, negotiations, collaborations, all sorts of things are required. Even IITs were created with collaborations. Bombay had a German collaboration, IIT Kanpur had an American collaboration, Kharagpur also had an American collaboration, I think. They were all created. Kharagpur was independent, was the first, the oldest. Bombay had a German collaboration, Kanpur had a US, huh? Kharagpur? No, no. Huh? IIT Bombay did not have a German collaboration. USSR, sure. I was under the completely wrong impression. Madras was German collaboration. Okay. So, anyway, so there is a whole lot of promotional activities which RBI had the headache to develop the monetary sector, just not banks, non-banks. And now it is worrying about regulating the non-bank. But setting up of non-banks was a big business, big task in the 50s, 60s and 70s. All right. So, you had these non-bank organizations, they have come into existence. Then they have various kinds of services that they have to provide, technical services, consultancy services, RBI, all right, advisory services in some sense. Then training of manpower, I have already said. I mean, you set up IIT, but it has to be run by proper people. So, you have to select the proper people. If the proper people cannot be obtained, you have to train them to become proper people. The better you do that, the better the institution is. Okay. Then you have a continuous industrial finance also, money for in big industries going via IDBI, etc. Now, they have become independent. I will show you funding from RBI has become zero. Non-bank funding has become nearly zero. RBI does not require to fund them anymore. They are doing so well. Touch wood, hopefully they would remain like that. NABARD, Exim Bank, IDBI, ESOP require no funding from RBI. They are running autonomously now. But once upon a time they required, all right, refinancing, a set up loan was given, then the loan was returned, again a new loan was sanctioned for the next 10 years and stuff. Okay. And therefore, National Housing Bank, another great example of non-bank activity of RBI is National Housing Bank that was set up. Okay. So, they promotional activities for a growing economy, for an economy coming out of a third world, third country economy to a second world economy requires a whole lot of effort. And our central bank plays those functions, has those functions. So, they have been doing an enormous amount of non-traditional duties, performing an enormous amount of non-traditional duties, which normally are in the first world, the central bank does not do. You look up Fed or Bank of England, they do not do that, not a lot. Okay. Now, I come to the part which is very important from monetary policy point of view, is the RBI, unlike other central banks, have developed some credit control instruments or mechanisms which are not at all available in other countries. So, let me talk about that. So, the third set of functions, non-traditional functions, I am going to talk about is the other credit control methods. Other credit control methods. The first one that I am going to talk about is the famous SLR. SLR is our creation. SLR is RBI's creation, Government of India's creation. It is not a foreign country. First, I am going to talk about statutory liquidity ratio. SLR, the famous SLR. Now, SLR is different from CRR. Some of the things are similar. They give you a fortnight to show SLR. You have to show SLR. This is the difference. You do not have to keep SLR with RBI. CRR, you have to keep the cash. Fortnight to show that is maintained on a weekly basis. And let me explain first what SLR is, then I would tell you how SLR is used therefore as a credit control instrument, which is monetary policy instrument. Credit control means what? Through SLR like CRR, it can control indirectly how much credit banks create. CRR बढ़ा दो, credit control stringent हो गया, the amount of credit banks can create will go down immediately. Reduce CRR, immediately banks would have more cash, they will create more credit. All right? It's like using one lever to control that. SLR is a credit control method, very unconventional. Now, what is SLR? There are 3 items in an SLR which are very important. One is similar to CRR. One is similar to CRR. One is similar to CRR, which is cash. Very good. But it's just not cash. Then it has very interesting current account balances. Now, what is current account balances? It says that a bank, and this cash is in addition to CRR. The CRR cash is different. Now you are talking about another amount of cash from the deposits, NDTL, which you have to hold. The percentage changes, the distribution of this within SLR changes. This may be 25% someday, sometimes it may increase it to 30% or whatever. The percentage distribution within SLR, the basket, how much is apple, how much oranges, how much bananas, it may change. At times it may be 25, 25, 50, and other thing, there are 3 items. Sometimes it will be 30, 30, 60 and 40, whatever. This is additional cash you are talking about. Then you have current account balances, which is very interesting. With the SBI, nobody else, with SBI, its subsidiaries, other nationalized banks and RBI. SBI, its subsidiaries, current account balances. So you have to open account and keep cash there with SBI, your cash there. Like I open an account and I have my cash with SBI, I have some money with Standard Chartered, I have some money with Bank of Baroda. Now here you are saying you have to open account with SBI, its subsidiaries, okay? May not be all, but some of them at least, other nationalized banks, which are called public sector banks. You know other banks, there are 20 of them, other banks, 19 or 20 of them, you know, in India. All right, then we have 2 on campus, public sector banks, SBI and what's the other bank? Union Bank, I forget. Okay. And RBI, banks can have a current account with the central bank. That's for centralized clearing, etc. I think. Current account, very important. जिधर में interest बहुत कम मिलते हैं, जिधर में withdrawal any amount हो सकता है. Current account, okay. Third is a group of things, at least my notes is saying, gold, unencumbered government securities, unencumbered, BERED, government securities and other approved securities. Gold, you understand. Gold, you understand, of course. Unencumbered securities, government securities are what? 2 types. It can be short-term money market securities, treasury bills. It can be government dated securities, long-term. Okay. Unencumbered means the securities that you have not used up in borrowing money from RBI, which are fresh securities. Securities can be used by banks in repo transaction, for instance. You learn repo, to borrow from another bank. Unencumbered basically means securities which you have not used up, which are untouched, lying in your vault. That amount you have to show. not the securities that are temporarily lying with another bank. So, you have borrowed money in a repo market or something, or from the RBI itself. They have borrowing programs for commercial banks against securities, where they use the rediscount rate. All right? Okay? Everybody with me? Akanksha, kya Akanksha na? Are you falling asleep? Is that boring? Okay. So, unencumbered securities and then government securities. Then you have other approved securities, other approved or approvals given by RBI, which are other approved securities, and typically they are semi-government organizations or government department securities. Suppose Air India issues a bond, state electricity boards issuing bonds, railway bonds, infrastructure bonds, various kinds of other approved securities can be there. It can also include some commercial paper of some companies. If they are good companies, commercial papers can also be there. So, you have now other approved securities. Three together forms a sub-item, and of course, current account balances with various SBI subsidiaries, nationalized banks and RBI, and of course, cash. All together is called SLR. And this SLR number roughly in India is around 25%. It goes down a little bit by 24 and then goes to up to 25. Now, look what therefore RBI has done, which has been in favor of Indian economy. That is why Indian monetary system did not crash. You are saying 7-8% CRR cash, jab deposit aa raha hai, net time and demand liabilities, all right, net time and demand liabilities, you calculate, that means you subtract if you have interbank deposits. CRR is met. Now, net demand and time liabilities upar ek 25%, so 25 plus 7, 32%, gone. 25% will be partly cash, whatever the ratio is, 2:3 whatever, partly cash, 2:3:5 maybe. I do not know, partly cash, partly current account, that percentage number is partly current account balances with other banks, etc., RBI, and then partly this security business and gold. So, it is forcing banks to invest in securities, because SLR, these components are must. Do you understand what I am saying? Holding cash is not enough, so it creates a captive market for government securities. Very bahut chalu. You are forced to invest in government securities and other securities because you have to meet the SLR requirement, and RBI people will come and count. Head office में, हर branch में देश में घूमते घूमते जाएगा नहीं RBI people. Every bank has a head office, so it will just have to go and check with the head office what the numbers are. With computers, etc., now it is wonderful. They have all the numbers all the time available, central, at a central place. You understand what I am saying? So, it creates a captive market for government investments. So, government is easily getting money. This they have also done with non-banks. I remember once upon a time I was reading of LIC investment policies. When LIC collects your and my premium by selling insurance policies, what do they do with the money? And they have created an enormous amount of captive market there too. So, LIC is a rich source of money for government. Borrowing money. You are borrowing money. This is not tax money. This is called borrowed money, the borrowing of the government, and which is dangerous too. Borrowing means debt. Tax is no debt. Tax government collect कर लिया, आपको वापस नहीं करना है. Borrowing means you have to return the money. It's tricky too. So, I am not going to get into public finance, but don't think, haha, कितना मजा है government का. You borrow आज कर रहा है, कल तो वापस करना है इसको, with interest. ये internal debt कहते हैं, public debt. So, that's also quite notorious. So, these three things they use. Now, imagine 25 plus 7, 32% gone, then bank has to keep cash for the withdrawal, because it's my account, your account. Suppose it's a savings account. I can withdraw cash. So, you will have to decide how much to keep aside for withdrawal. And then fixed deposit, they know the term of the fixed deposit, 1 year, 2 years, 3 year, whatever. Okay? Very short term fixed deposits are there, very long term fixed deposits are also there. It varies from above 1 year to 10 year or something, I think. If you go to State Bank, there is a board behind the cash counter where the passbooks are updated. Check that out yourself. And the interest rates are mentioned. You can check it out yourself. Acha. Now, so what effectively you have done, you have given very little freedom to the banks to create credit. Highly conservative country. And conservative financial system has helped India a lot in these difficult days. You go to a foreign country, SLR, सुना तो नहीं क्या है? बैंक ने चुना है मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी इंस्ट्रूमेंट. CRR, अरे वो तो इनएफेक्टिव पड़ा हुआ है. 1% हो सकता है, 0.1 भी हो सकता है CRR. Now, when the system wanted money, it has misused, it's malfunctioning, there's nobody to help. So where did they get the help? Did you realize what happened with the US economy or what is happening with the European economy? Government. And that government debt, when it increases too much, they don't know where to go. In case of Europe, they are trying to create European Central Bank, which is continuously funded by 1 or 2 rich countries like Germany and France, to bail out Greece, Spain, Portugal, who knows who are members, all in trouble. In US, they are now inviting China to buy. China is the biggest investor in US Treasury bill to fund their deficit. चाइना के पास इतना US डॉलर पड़ा हुआ है, 2 नंबरी एक्सपोर्ट करके इतना बनाए हैं that now it helps out US. And US, with a rich economy, with wars, successive misplanning, unregulated financial system, has just nearly destroyed the country. Now they show on TV the miles after miles somebody driving a reporter showing all industries shut down, which reminds me of West Bengal. In the 70s, I used to go through by a local train sometimes, I had some work. Industry after industry has shut down. They show a similar thing with the US, and I cannot believe it's that US they're talking about. A British journalist, BBC journalist, made a video, a documentary recently they showed. Okay. So this is what they have done. So effectively they are saying, banks, you have very little leeway with respect to how you use the deposits. Highly regulated, very strict regulations. And SLR is 25%. Can you believe? 25%. 25% of NDTL is a huge number. At a CRR 7% से 6.5 जब होता है, how many thousand crores the liquid system has, they tell you on TV. Extra liquidity. Okay. So this is what they have. Now what they do that? SLR has 3 things therefore. Remember, of course it is a credit control instrument, like a monetary policy instrument, like CRR or bank rate, but it's also is an instrument which ensures investment in government securities, which I use the term captive market for government securities. It has created a captive market for government securities and semi-government organization securities. All right, if nobody there to buy, banks will be forced to buy because they have an SLR to meet every week with a fortnight's gap. All right, okay. Finally, it of course ensures solvency of banks, which I am trying to say. That conservative policies like this or instruments like this ensure solvency. Banks will always have cash and not get into a bank holiday like a situation. Bank holiday means bank will shut down. It will never happen. Even if they misplan credit and there is too much of NPA, non-performing assets, there will always be a backup in our commercial banks, not to become bankrupt. there will always be a solvency. All right, banks will not have any problem. Now, up to 1985, it was therefore it is maintained fraction by India as on last Friday of second preceding fortnight. I am not so sure. I have a problem here. I have written a question whether it is maintained on a weekly basis or it is maintained on a fortnightly basis. SLR may be slightly different. Can anybody ask, anybody knows, anybody working in a bank or RBI, anybody's parent, anybody's father, uncle working in a bank can ask? SLR may be maintained on a fortnightly basis. Can you check that, please? I thought it's a weekly basis thing like CRR. Can somebody check that information? If anybody knows, anybody working with, say, the RBI here in Kanpur, or they have zonal offices, city offices also. The SLR, what the requirement is now, it used to be weekly basis, but it may have changed to a fortnightly basis. Can somebody find out that information? Small technical information. Good to know that. Maybe it is maintained on a fortnightly basis. CRR से थोड़ा अलग है. SLR need not be maintained on a weekly basis. Maybe on a fortnightly basis it is maintained. Because here I have it seems to be, my notes are indicating it is maintained on a fortnightly basis, because I have written presently it is held as a fraction of a bank's net DTL, that is NDTL, on a fortnightly basis. Till 1985 it was maintained on a weekly basis, maybe fortnightly. Please somebody check that. Okay, you can open an internet or something. Sometimes this minor information is just not available. They would tell you the SLR number if you open RBI, but it will not tell you whether it is maintained on a weekly basis or a fortnightly basis. Now, here I get stuck because I am not in Bombay, neither I have the energy to go to Kanpur city. Once I went to this bank, I remember I was preparing a similar course in the mid-90s. I went to the bank and talked to somebody whom I used to know. When I came out completely confused, because I realized these fellows who work at bank and sit on desks have no responsibility towards these monetary policy regulations that RBI has said. The big bada babus are doing in head office. Head office, they collect information from them, but they don't have the technical details at all. So CRR के बारे में, SLR के बारे में सब गलती हमको बता दिया अंदाज से, क्योंकि इन लोग जो बैंक में काम करते, don't think that they also know these economics or regulatory issues very well. They have somebody handling cash, somebody handling foreign exchange, you know. How would they know what the SLR and CR? They have heard of them, but they don't know the details. So I got totally confused. I said, no way I'm going to ask these people. Initially I thought I can go walk into a bank and ask anybody and get the information. It's not at all like that. So you have to go to the right person in a bank to ask, preferably in the head office or in a zonal office, where there is somebody in charge who does this work. So the other people in bank need not know. Banking operation is multi kind of, you know, front operation. So there are various special, like a chest doctor need not be a ENT specialist. So they have heard of ENT, can give you some idea, but will give you, if you ask them too much, they will give you incorrect information, because he is a chest specialist. He cannot know much about ENT. So this kind of a thing happened, experience I had. So I had no idea where to go. Okay, you can ask them. And did I mention 50% as an upper limit? These small information is sometimes not available, but I have got it somewhere. Hopefully it's correct. So I'm not passing on incorrect information. SLR can vary from 20 to 40. Sometimes it has reached 40, but very few periods. All right. And like CRR, they also had an incremental SLR. That is, there's an SLR on total net and demand liabilities that you have to show. Now deposits have increased by some amount X over previous week, suppose. So on X, an extra SLR will be added. Like an income tax, when we pay like an education cess. We pay an income tax on the entire thing, all right? Then the tax amount, 2% of that is added again. Whatever tax I'm paying as education cess. Government collects that, Government of India, from me and other fixed income group people. I don't know whether they do that with the companies. Personal income tax they do. For a number of years they're doing it to fund education expenditures in the country. There are various education schemes for primary schools, etc. They do that. They collect some tax revenue from us. So it's like incremental tax. It's an incremental SLR they had. And then they finally, well, in 1994-92 they had incremental SLR. And then finally they withdrew the incremental SLR. And if some SLR is kept with the banks, I doubt that. SLR, if they, unlike CRR, if you fail to report SLR, proper amount of SLR, there is no penalty, but RBI will watch that, and RBI does this refinancing business with banks. RBI helps out banks with cash from time to time for various reasons. It starts restricting that amount. Not a penalty. In CRR, case of failure in maintaining CRR attracts penalty, which is usually the bank rate which is used or something. In case of SLR, so far I know, there is no penalty that is attracted, it attracts, but RBI can say, अगले बार help उतना मिलेगा नहीं, अपना find, अपना बचाओ. You manage your own finances. We won't help you much. They can do that. They can become strict with the bank repeatedly failing to report the true amount of SLR, to maintain SLR. Okay? Alright. So at times it has gone to nearly upper limit 40%, 35% it became SLR. And in the 90s it happened. Worst economic years have the highest. This I told you one day. I don't understand this. Worst economic situation may highest SLR. What kind of monetary policy RBI has? I don't understand. Recently it has happened. To control inflation, they raise CRR. Raise CRR. Raise CRR. Interest rates. But the economy has been going through recession worldwide. All economies, literally. There is no economy which is totally protected, insulated. It should be the other way around. We should have much relaxed monetary policy so the banks can create more credit, companies can get cheap loan and keep on investing. So today Indian economy, IMF report has come on TV this afternoon. It has projected India's GDP growth rate in the current financial year to be 4.9 with a sub-comment, second line. The conditions may deteriorate further. IMF statement, just I saw before leaving home. Either मैं तो बता रहा है 5%, how many economies in the world today had over 5% growth rate? From 7% it may have 8% it may have gone down. IMF just said 4.9 with the possibility of conditions deteriorating further in the course of this year. This they have created. They couldn't have. They could have avoided it. India was so well protected with the conservative monetary system. If they had just the right monetary policies, but just to check inflation, they adopted such stringent policies, which is called contractionary monetary policy, not an expansionary or restrictive monetary policy. Anyway, so this is the SLR business I talked about, but I haven't concluded all non-traditional functions of RBI. There are more important things coming up. So today we are running out of time, 48. Can we talk about that on Thursday? Okay, very good.